There are three ways you can leave Dadaab. One thing is to go back to Somalia. Every decision is individual, but for some individuals, going back to Somalia and surviving amidst the war is better than staying in the refugee camp. The other way is to be resettled abroad, which is what we mean when you hear all this talk of numbers, of quotas of 10,000, 20,000 refugees and so on. That is the UN quota system, which is the official pipeline, the way that the international community has, since the Second World War, with the setup of UNHCR, dealt with large movements of population. So there is this quota system that's supposed to share the burden so that individual countries don't have too many refugees and so that people have other options. That system is pretty much broken. So for example, this talking about 10,000 or 20,000, this is change. This is absolute change. And to give you some sense, the birth rate in the camp is 1,000 people a month. The quota system from Dadaab takes around 2,000 people, split between Australia, Europe, and North America. But there is no way that 2,000 a year is going to get anywhere near the 1,000 a month. And this is just one camp. So what we need to have is a much more grown-up conversation about fixing this system, because it used to work. In the 90s, people went from Bosnia, from Rwanda, and so on, to refugee camps. They went for perhaps a few years. They had perhaps an expectation that within 10 years or so, they would get what's called a durable solution. Either they would be incorporated into that new country, or they would go back to their country of origin, or they would get resettled abroad when the rich countries would step in and say, well, it looks like peace isn't arriving, so we need to do something with this population. What's happened now, what the Guardian newspaper in the UK calls the closing of the North, has been that all those quotas have been dialed down. And so there's been this build-up, and I think the Syrians are learning the lessons of Dadaab. They're looking at a refugee camp, and they're not seeing that as a temporary thing. They're seeing that as a permanent solution where they're being asked to go and fester and give up their civil and political rights. And they quite rightly don't want to go. And they're choosing another option instead. And the only reason that there are more Syrians, I think, than Africans coming, certainly from the Somalis, is that it's cheaper. From Syria to Europe is around $2,000. From Somalia to southern Europe is around $10,000. To get to northern Europe is around $15,000.